Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Raid Shadow Legends, and in today's video, we're going to be diving deep into the craters of the Eternal Fire here, and we're going to be doing a guide to team building on the Demon Lord clan boss. I realized that I don't think that I've done a video on this yet. I've done a lot of new player guides here on the Boilon channel, but I seem to have skipped over Demon Lord. So what we're going to be doing in today's video is we're going to be breaking down each of the team member slots, in my opinion, and the best kind of characters that you should be using to build your team. Now, this might seem pretty obvious for some, but I'm hoping that the information in this video will maybe help you think about the roles that you're looking for when it comes to building a proper team for Demon Lord. And this should help improve your damage and get you further along in Demon Lord, because this is daily content and this is really, really important. Now, some of the stuff that you'll learn in here could be actually used on Chimera, because he's not as oppressive as Hydra, who we're not going to be talking about in today's video, and we're not focusing on Chimera either. But the team that I'm using in Demon Lord actually isn't far off from what I'm using in Chimera either right now. So hopefully this will give you some great tips for your game's progress. And if you found the information in this video helpful, then please do click on that subscribe button, ring the notification bell for all things Raid Shadow Legends here on the Boilon channel. And if you haven't started playing Raid yet, then maybe you should, because now throughout the month of March, you are going to be able to get yourself a free Legendary Supreme Gallic, a great Void champion to start off your game if you download using the QR code on the screen or in the link in the description down below and use the promo code Supreme6. I'm going to have that on the screen here. And I also want to mention that, of course, through using the link and the QR, you are going to get yourself some freebies, including an Epic Champion Zargala, which is really great. And that's not all, because you will also get yourself a Epic Ugo at account level 15. And that's not all. Still, we have the Alice the Wanderer event that's still going right now for a limited time, which I believe might still be running until the beginning of April. So make sure that you start your game now and get 2 legendary free champions and 2 epic champions to start your game off. All right, now before we go any further in the video, I do want to share with you guys this table. This is a clan boss drop loot table and drop rates table from Ayumi Love. Now, I love numbers, I love statistics, and this kind of showcases why Demon Lord is so important to improve upon and the kind of rewards that you get from it. If you guys didn't know, honestly, great resource here. I'll leave a link in the description down below to this table because it's really nice, and it breaks down the percentage chance that you're going to get from the variety of different chests in the different difficulties for ancient shards, void shards, sacred shards, skill tombs, artifacts, all things like that. But realistically, the most important things up here are going to be your shards and are going to be your books, right? These are the 2 most important things that come from here on a daily basis. And to give you a good example, things really start to kick up probably, I would say, around Nightmare. But there's still a lot of like the percentage chance of the shards do go up, and once you start getting into hard, or actually the final chest of normal mode, even you start getting some chances of void shards. But it's not until the last chest of nightmare that you start getting sacred shards, and this is really important because these are every single day, and this is going to stack up. Shards are very important for a variety of different events, and just obviously pulling for champions. And so this is resources that you're going to need to accumulate, and the books as well, right? You get epic books as early as normal mode as well, the last chest of normal mode. But you start getting legendary books also in Nightmare. So around the same time that you're getting sacred shards. And so just to put into perspective here, like at the final chest for Nightmare over here, this column here, 6.1% for sacred shards, 6.3% for legendary books, 9.5% chance for an epic book, 3% for void shards, and 21% for ancient shards. Now this goes up quite dramatically all the way, from back here in like easy mode where you're only getting like a 1.3% chance at ancient shards, but it does scale up quite a bit until eventually we get to the end where I'm not at either. Ultra Nightmare, the very, very, very last chest of Ultra Nightmare will give you 13.7% of sacred shards, 18% void shards, and 50% of an ancient shard. So obviously these are our big goals, because once we start getting here, then we're going to be getting a lot of shards and a lot of books on a daily basis. Even over here on Ultra Nightmare, you're getting 16% for an epic book, 10.6% on a legendary book. So those are pretty decent, when you consider these are daily drops. Obviously, if you're in the middle here somewhere, you're not going to be seeing it as frequently, but is still not something that you should be skipping over. All right, so how do you set up a team for clan boss, you might wonder. Now, this is my team. I'm in the course of kind of changing things up a little bit, especially in this apothecary slot. How we're going to work this, and I'm going to put a little graphic here on the right-hand side in terms of the different slots, well, the lineup that you would see in the team setup window, this over here. And I'm going to leave that there. We're going to be talking about each of these slots one by one and the types of characters and roles that you should think about when you're building a good team for Demon Lord. All right, so slot number one is what I'm going to be dubbing the Kale slot. For new players, hopefully that you did choose Kale as your starter champion. You might have noticed that he's in my Demon Lord team as well. I think the reason why he's kept up so long in my game anyways is because I do have a 6 red. So mileage will vary on this, but we're dubbing him the Kale damage slot. And why? And it's because of his kit. So typically this first slot, and I wanted to start here rather than diving into the pure damage sort of characters, is because Kale has a really powerful poison mechanic, right, on his A3, Disintegrate. So attacks 4 times at random, or 2 Demon Lord, right? 40% chance, actually it's up to 50% with the books, of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. This is really, really good, right? You can get all the way up to 4 poisons, like 4 or 5% poisons is pretty powerful on a cooldown of 4. This is a really good skill. And I think that in role number 1 or in position 1, you want a damage character that does apply poisons. This is probably the easiest way to build up your damage early on when it comes to Demon Lord. Now, obviously, rosters will vary, right? Some of the characters, some of you might have some really good champions, some of you might have less good characters, which is why I wanted to start with Kale here. And so, if you have Kale, if you don't have anyone better than him, he is a really good enabler for the poisons. He also has poison, a 2.5% poison on his A1 basic. Now, the one thing that I do want to point out, though, is that all enemies, including Demon Lord, has a cap of debuffs at 10. This is pretty important because you don't want like 2 poisoners, because otherwise you're going to have a whole stack of them, and all you'll have is debuffs of poisons, and that's it. And that means you won't be able to apply any other important debuffs like attack down, defense down, leech. There's a variety of different debuffs that would be very helpful. So having one really strong poisoner is going to help you a lot. Now, there are other alternative characters. Again, really depends on who you pulled. I'm actually wondering whether or not this character Venom Mage might be a replacement to Kale as well down the line once I upgrade them, because very good poison abilities as well here, and also reduces damage taken if they're under heal reduction. There's some pretty good stuff here. But again, utilizing that poison mechanic, there's a handful of other characters that do this. There is a rare champion that I kind of want to point out as well that you want to look out for if you don't have any other options, or you didn't start with Kale. They're actually rare under the Undead Hordes faction called the Frozen Banshee, who also utilizes poison and also places the poison sensitivity debuff, which does mean that the poisons are going to tick for more damage. So again, some 5% poison debuffs there on a basic, which is pretty good as well, but they have to be under that poison sensitivity. So some pretty good stuff here on A1 that's pretty powerful. So again, having a strong poisoner can really make a big difference. There are champions out there that can kind of take advantage of poison, that just kind of do a little bit more. That's how characters work in Raid Shadow Legends, I feel, is that the better characters are just going to do what Kale does, just a whole lot more of that. But that's kind of the characters that I would look for. A mixed kind of damage character with a poison would be very good star champion for start for Demon Lord. Now, character number 2, this is what I'm going to be dubbing the damage, like the pure kind of damage type character. For me, this is Alice, because Alice, if you've caught any of my previous videos, I've spoke about Alice in a handful of videos because she's OP as all hell. I mean, at least in the beginning, right? Like, she's really solid damage. You're also getting a free 5 red star through the Alice chase, which is going away in the next, I think, week and a half. So do be mindful about that. But she does do a lot of damage, and she's carrying actually the bulk of my damage on Demon Lord. There's a couple of reasons for that, namely that if you do happen to be using her and you do have the 5 red, or you're starting to gain red stars for her, then I would recommend the Brimstone Blessing. If you're using Alice for general PvE purposes, this is incredibly powerful. This Brimstone places a smite debuff on the enemy or on Demon Lord in this instance, and it drops a meteorite every time he uses an active skill. Now, this this meteorite does like 250,000 damage when I'm running Demon Lord, so that is quite significant, and this adds up over the course of the fight. But her just raw damage potential is very high. Warple, her A1, often is hitting 3 times in a row. I actually don't use Clockwork Cyclone. I kind of use my AI. I set the AI to not use Clockwork Cyclone because I feel like it doesn't do as much damage as doing the A1 or the A3. So that's just me there. But this second role is going to be your primary damage dealer, in my opinion. Not necessarily a poisoner, unless you have someone that can exploit that, right? So, but primarily, you're going to want a very solid your strongest DPS character basically in this point. Depending on what your roster has available to you, that is going to be up to you. I'm not going to be mandating characters because there's so many champions in Raid Shadow Legends, but this is what I kind of want to point out to you guys is that whoever that you find in your roster is some of your strongest characters that are going to do a lot of damage, use that in the second slot. Or I guess this is my second character that I'm telling you about. It doesn't matter what order you necessarily put them in. So let's move on to number 3 because this is going to be really important as well. And for the third character that I want to talk about in the team lineup is going to be your support. Actually, in fact, I think characters 3 through 5 are pretty much support characters. Support is the most important role in Raid Shadow Legends. A very strong support character can really push you in dungeons and clan boss and all that, because if you don't stay alive, then you're not going to make it very far. And in the purposes of this, we're going to be using Rector Drath as my support healer. So it's really important that you have a good, solid healer character that can do team-wide healing. It is really important. So as far as Rector Drath goes, who is available through the Apprentice Pass, if you start as a new player, you can buy them. I believe it's 15 or 20 US dollars, and you do get Rector Drath that way. Very, very solid character that's been helping me since the beginning of the game. But she does put on a group heal there for 20% of this champion's max HP, so based on Rector's HP there. Places a Perfect Veil buff. So Perfect Veil actually reduces damage taken by the team as well by about, I'm pretty sure it's 15%. And then we have Continuous Heal, aka Regeneration, which is going to be very helpful there. So, having a good clan boss, demon lord team is going to be important that you have a solid healer. So that third slot for me is going to be that. Now, that's going to depend on what characters you have available to you. Ideally, and maybe you don't have this flexibility, if you're really, really new to the game. There's a couple of characters. I don't like them, but it might be the best that you might have. And like I'm pretty sure everyone starts with this. War Priest, right? So this is like your bare bones healer if you don't have access to anything else, because they do heal for 10% of the target's max HP AoE, and you can upgrade this as well to get that up a little bit higher. So this is kind of like your budget healer if you literally have no other option. But after this, as you pull more characters, hopefully you gain access to some additional healer types. And what I do like, well, actually, this is what War Priest does, but does attack up as well. So a lot of support, even healer characters, are going to have additional things that they do, right? Rector Drath has a revive, but also the Perfect Veil buff, which is going to decrease the damage that you take to your team, which is really, really important. And there's some also additional healing for Rector Drath there with the passive, and Rector Drath does have a revive as well. So again, you're going to start to get characters that do healing, but do a bunch of other things, more buffs. Also, actually, Rector Drath has a attack down debuff, which is really, really good too. Obviously going to improve your survivability against the clan boss by having these debuffs, these really solid debuffs, combined with healing and solid buffs. Those are going to be your supports that's going to make a pretty big deal, whether or not you survive or not. All right, and character number 4 is also going to be a support character of sorts. Now, in this case, I'm looking for more of a heavy debuffer, and this can take a lot of different forms, right? There's a lot of characters in this game, but I want to kind of shore up some of the deficiencies that I don't have yet from any of the other previous characters that we already talked about. Now, in this case, I'm using Geomancer as a support. I mean, it says he's an attack character, but, support slash he's not a damage type, but let's just say that he's really, really good anyways. He does apply an HP burn and weaken debuff, but when enemies are burned with Geomancer, damage gets reflected back to the enemy. So I guess in this way he is doing some damage, but it's mostly from his support capabilities. He does a lot of things with regards to that. So he's chucking back a lot of the damage, making Geomancer one of the strongest epics in the game. Now, of course, not everyone's going to have Geomancer. That's just what I'm using. Now, Ugo was someone that I was using beforehand as well. A character that you are going to get, right? For using the promo, the QR code in the top right there, or the link in the description to get Ugo as well. Like one of the best epics in the game as well, because Ugo puts a decreased defense debuff. This is really, really big. Also, block buffs is pretty handy as well on Demon Lord. So some really, really solid debuffs here that actually is good against Demon Lord. Also, Leech. Leech is a debuff that when you do damage to the enemy, you're going to heal some of that back to you. Now, again, I do want to reiterate from what I talked about Kale was that you can only have 10 debuffs on an enemy, right? So if we talk about the smite from Alice, that's taking up one. Leech would take up one. Defense, decreased defense. So you probably only have slots for like maybe 4 to 6 poison debuffs maximum before things start to become an issue. But you want to have a character that can place good debuffs that are going to increase your damage potential, right? For me, that's Geomancer, but it could be Ugo for you that puts on decreased defense so that you're swinging, all your DPS is hitting for harder. That's really important too, or they can help heal themselves up with Leech, right? So that's going to depend on your roster as well. Finding a good solid debuffer that kind of fills the spots that you don't have yet, the things that you haven't applied yet to the boss. Those are the kind of roles that you want to put in here. And finally, for the last spot, this is where I'm going to reserve this for a speed character, aka someone that could speed up your team. I think this is actually really, really important. And this can come in a variety of different ways depending on what you have on your roster. Now, right now, I'm doing Nightmare actually on my Demon Lord, and I'm still using Apothecary, who's a rare. I spoke about Apothecary. I did a video on him actually within my first week of starting this channel because he's one of the best rares that kind of do this sort of thing. It's really important that you get somebody on your team that does increase speed buffs. This is super, super important. If you have better characters that can do more than this, even better. But speed up for 30% speed buff for 2 turns, and turn meter as well for 15% on a cooldown of 3. This is basically almost always up. Now, he does do a little bit of healing as well, which is nice, so can keep your characters alive a little bit longer. There are obvious alternative characters that you could use. High Katoon, I have spoke about in a video as well, was the 30-day login calendar, and this basically is kind of like Apothecary, but does a little bit more. So it also does do the exact same thing with the turn meter and the speed up. So if you don't have Apothecary, this is a very great option. The only problem is that instead of rare books, you need epic books to decrease the cooldowns on these abilities for High Katoon. But High Katoon is better in other dungeons because of the decreased speed debuff, and also really good in arena as well because of the decreased turn meter. So there's a lot of extra stuff related to turn meter and speed that High Katoon does, which unfortunately actually isn't that viable in Demon Lord. So I do prefer Apothecary over High Katoon in Demon Lord because these debuffs just won't land. So it's not really worth using. But I got really, really lucky in one of my Sacred Shard pulls and got Estrid Dream Song. And so we got that same sort of stuff, the increased speed buff, but now it's doing 50% attack on all allies for 3 turns instead of 2 turns, and fills the turn meter, same thing as before, right? So it's that kind of thing where when you get better characters, it does everything they did before, but does a little bit more, right? A lot of the rest of the stuff actually isn't that relevant to Demon Lord, I'll admit. But the attack buff already just makes it better against Demon Lord because now all of my characters are going to be doing more damage. So that's really, really good there too. So this last spot, like I said, try to find someone that can buff your speed. That would be really, actually, I'll tell you about a budget option. I use this character in my first couple of weeks for a while. Eris, who you can find on chapter 6 of the campaign, also does not do speed bar, but does cleanse 1 debuff from all allies, and then with the books can get up to a 100% chance of increased speed on all allies for 2 turns. So this is your budget option if you don't have Apothecary. So I would say Eris, Apothecary, and then if you start building on that, happen to get someone that's better in the epic or plus category, the more speed and the more turns you take, the more damage that you're going to do on Demon Lord. And if you followed everything that I said here in today's video, then you should have a pretty solid team to work with. You're going to have some good defense, you're going to have some good debuffs, you're going to have really fast speed, and then you're going to have some damage in the form of Alice, possibly, or someone better. And Kale, as a poison debuffer and damage character as well, depending on what's available at your disposal. So I really hope that some of the stuff in this video helped you to kind of prepare in terms of having characters available and access to them, but also, really pushing your progress in Demon Lord. It's one of the most important things that you do every single day because it is available every single day. And being able to help your clan out and push further on this is not only going to help them, but it's going to help you as well because you're going to get more and more of these chests, right? As you progress further, and you're going to get more shards, you're going to get more books, you're going to get a lot more rewards in general down the line. I need to get past Nightmare. That's where I'm currently at. But the goal is obviously to get as high as possible. And I hope some of the information in this video helped you. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Otherwise, that's going to be the end of this video, everyone, and I'll see you guys on the next one. And don't forget throughout the month of March that there is going to be a free promo code, which I'll have here across the screen, Supreme6, which will get you a free legendary Supreme Gallic, really great Void champion that'll really help you start off your game. Also, there is going to be, of course, some more freebies and a free epic Zargala, who you can get by using the QR code in the top right hand of the screen, as well as, of course, Alice, who we've been talking about a lot lately, and Ugo, who you will get an account level 15. So that's 4 champions that you're going to get for your start in Raid Shadow Legends. An absolute amazing time to play. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you'll be greatly helping out the channel. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.